hosts for those who are trying to get started. My name is Mike Doyle. I'm the Vice President for Research at New Mexico Tech. My background covers both research and tech entrepreneurship. I spun a company out of UCSF back in the mid-90s, LBOS Technologies. We created fundamental cloud technologies, technologies in data security and cryptography, AI, and genomics. So we worked across many different fields. I'm now going to step through the panelists and ask each of them to give a little introduction. We've got 3 microphones, so we'll just hand microphones back and forth. But Alex Hafez, Vice President of Operations and Corporate Development, co-founder of Circular Genomics. We've got Jonathan Hebert, PhD, founder and CEO of Lojo Engineering. John Chavez, Chief Financial Officer, ORC Technologies. And Andrew Clark, co-founder and CEO of Hoonify Technologies. So, Alex, why don't you start, give us a little background on your company.
All right. Thank you. I'm Alex Hafez, as you mentioned, VP of Corporate Development and Operations at Circular Genomics. It's a company that I had co-founded actually 3 days after I finished my PhD at the University of New Mexico, based on research from the laboratory that I had earned my PhD in. I was the founding CEO of the company, where what we're working on is creating mental health diagnostics using circular RNA as a biomarker for these tests. It's a type of RNA that's highly stable, and for the first time we really have a good biomarker to look at gene expression of what's going on in your brain and then proliferating in your blood. So we're developing our blood-based tests that can predict antidepressant response for patients with depression, and then also assisting with diagnosis of depression and looking into expanding into other neurological conditions and perhaps oncology in the future as well. So.
Okay, great. Jonathan, how about...
Hello. Oh, sorry, whoa.
We're all awake now.
I'm John Hebert, and I am the founder of Lojo Engineering. So the Lo, everybody asks me, is in Lojo is my wife, Lo, over there. The technology we're here to discuss is pseudomem hydro, which is built on top of a platform technology that I spent 10 years developing called ChemiPattern. It's a wet chemical lithography technology. But pseudomem hydro is a low power water treatment technology that we hope to help make water stressed communities in Mexico more resilient. And so I'm here to talk a little bit about how we shaped our application, our first application on water for New Mexico context, based on lots of feedback and support we've gotten from mentors and the rainforest.
Okay, next we've got John Chavez.
Good afternoon, everyone. My name is John Chavez. I'm the managing director of the New Mexico Startup Factory, which is the first venture studio in New Mexico. And we created ORC Tech. And one of the blessings is the people that we've had helping us with this technology. So NASA is our license holder. I mean, we license the technology from NASA. Really great to work with them. The New Mexico State Economic Development Department provided us with a small grant, and the NMSBA program at Sandia has done a ton of testing for us. And what we're creating is a portable cell phone signal booster. It's been in development. We've had some really good success, and we've had some really phenomenal failure in the process. And so that's what startups do, and I look forward to talking to you about it.
Terrific. Andrew Clark, Hoonify.
Thank you for the invite today. I'm Andrew Clark, CEO of Hoonify Technologies. We're a spin-off out of Sandia National Labs who created an advanced software platform that transforms regular computers into supercomputers. It's important because even at places like national labs and engineering firms, people still wait to get access to this technology. And so we solved 3 key problems that scientists, researchers, and engineers had at the labs, at the DoD, and in the intelligence community. First, immediate access to the technology. That's not the case today. The second is that we have a system that's ready in minutes. Traditionally, these systems take 3 to 6 months before they're usable by engineers and scientists at the labs. And finally, we offer it at a fraction of the cost. What that really does is it makes this technology broadly accessible to all individuals and all companies around the world that are looking for competitive advantages using complex computations. Glad to be here today. And everybody is really paying attention, so thank you.
Yeah, this is better than I expected. I thought we'd be competing with lunch, but everybody's transfixed. So now I'm going to go through a series of questions and ask each of you to respond and tell a little bit about your experience on these topics. The first is relating to intellectual property. People still have, startups tend to struggle with this whole question of how to deal with things like patents, copyrights, trademarks, trade secrets, and so on. So could you discuss your experiences in protecting intellectual property and whether or not that has become a key factor in your path forward? Let's, Alex, start with you.
Yeah, so our company was a spin out of the University of New Mexico. We have 3 patents that are pending that were filed by, I'm a co-inventor on one of the 3, but our professor that I earned my PhD with. And so we've worked closely with Lojo Rainforest to develop those patents, write the patents. Now they're pending, hopefully they'll get issued. Internally in the company, we have our own IP attorney that we work with, and diagnostics is a difficult space because there have been previous court rulings that make it difficult to get certain parts of diagnostic patents issued because we are dealing with natural occurring biomarkers. So, I mean, I think it's taken quite a bit of work, but I mean, we have our own IP in the company. There's pieces of our algorithms that will remain trade secrets, but so we have to sort of strategize and figure out how we're going to move forward, and then we'll continue to get more IP as we need to in the future.
Thanks. Andrew?
Yeah, so Hoonify Technologies is currently working with an IP patent attorney. One of the challenges we saw was to continue developing our product within the lab space meant that we would have to co-lease this and protect it with the Department of Energy. And so we were given an option. Either stop the development of the capability and leave, or stay within and then share all the proceeds. So we left. And as a self-funded startup, it's very difficult to find partners in the space of IP protection that are willing to offer deferred payment or alternative methods of payment and services to help protect it. And I do want to give a shout out. So Innovate New Mexico had a program where they brought a number of people in, and we were able to find, above all, a UNM grad in software patent protection who we're now working with to capture and protect the technologies that we've developed, both from processes and methodologies as well as some software innovation. So it's a challenge, and it is a part of our future strategy as we continue to raise funding and bring the products to market.
Great. Jonathan?
Well, I'll take this opportunity to say I can't thank UNM Rainforest enough for being so easy to work with. The original experiments I did for my technology I did in 2012, and I kept it. Once I realized what it was and what it worked, I matured it and kept it secret for almost a decade, and just started talking about it after I had established some provisional patents and now patent pending with the rainforest, and their knowledge about what's necessary and what you can and cannot say, it really helped guide me, because what makes our technology one of those frontier technologies is totally unpublished. We have nanoparticles we produced and methods that we've used that, and essentially only a small handful of people. Ashraf was on my committee, by the way. I just want to shout out to Ashraf. So, but with that, it means that I haven't been able to publish anything. I've been advised not to publish, and the secret sauce is what it really, the breakthrough part, that it's all tied together. So I'm grateful for the support and knowledge that the Rainforest has been able to continually provide me so that I avoid any slip-ups.
So John.
Sure. So our technology was originally created in the 1990s to connect astronauts at the International Space Station. And our chief technology officer found this technology at NASA. We worked with them with a startup license as we continued to develop the product and the knowledge around that. And so a shout out to NASA once again for getting us that license. What we've done on the back end is we've actually filed 8 more patents, mostly on connecting the device to a tree or in a poster or something like that. So we have that over the foundational patent, but also a lot of additional IP that's been developed for the actual operations of the device.
Great. So one of the problems for a startup is working out really what their compelling value proposition is. What's your unique, pitch? How will customers benefit by switching to your technology over competitors or the way they had done it before? Can you talk to that sort of thought process? Alex?
Yeah, so our company, the first product that we're working on is a test that would predict antidepressant response in patients with depression. And our way into this and looking at the competition was there really isn't anything out there that's reliable for it. There was a test that was developed by another startup and acquired by Myriad that uses DNA-based testing to predict antidepressant response, but their focus is to look at how your body just metabolizes those drugs. What we're doing is actually creating a molecular profile of that individual's brain by looking at their circular RNA expression levels and using sort of the exact gene expression of what's going on in your head to determine whether or not you might be more likely to respond to sertraline versus Zoloft or fluoxetine, other antidepressants. So ours is more of a direct monitoring approach, looking at what's going on. RNA is something that's dynamic changes, while DNA is something that is stagnant. So we can look at sort of at that point in time and see what's going on in that patient's brain and try to better understand how to treat them. What we're coming forward with is much more sensitive and highly predictive assay that would be used for this type of prediction. It's also something that can be used over time and monitor patients, and then also help with the prediction of the depression diagnosis as well. So by creating a much wider breadth of information that we're giving the physician, I think that's where our sort of product is unique, and hope that it ends up being accepted by the market. So,
Terrific. Thanks. Andrew?
Yeah, thank you, Mike. Look, value proposition, we had a bit of an unfair advantage. We tested this product over 4 years within the DoD, the DOE, and the intelligence community. So the feedback we got from testing this with people who needed this technology was what meant the world. Right? We identified that access was the major issue, so we helped develop a product that was always available. They needed an environment that was ready to go, so we built a solution around this to support their needs so they could accelerate their results and their research rather than tinker with systems. And finally, cost, always a factor. So from our perspective and the customer feedback we received, providing products that were on demand, that were ready to go, pre-configured and pre-optimized, and had a very low price point compared to regular industry alternatives was critical for people to use this and to continue adopting it. And again, we really struggled to meet the demand of this within those spaces, so we chose to leave to commercialize it and build a company based on this technology.
Okay, Jonathan?
Great question, by the way. So, in order to avoid sounding like a crazy person at a bus station shouting, I don't know if any of you guys were there at my first showcase in August, there was so much you can do with this frontier technology that it was hard to even convey exactly what I was talking about, let alone a value proposition. So, in working with mentors and doing interviews and kind of just being more intuitive to, the context of where I'm from, New Mexico, and something just clicked after I was talking with one of my many advisors that water makes sense. Water is a message that people resonate with, and it is extraordinarily important. And then I remembered my wife, she got her PhD at UNM, and that's where we met, and she's a student of the Center for Water and Environment, and then I was like, yeah, that makes sense. And so that shifting the message, identifying, we could do all these things, to what should we do first, that was like a very aha moment. So the context of us adapting our platform technology to low power water treatment is totally centered around where's the available funding, where are people interested, and what is actually going to make the biggest impact. And I'll also mention this. So my wife and I, we met planning a humanitarian engineering project in Nepal. So we've been in Nepal several times, and we see, how critical water is and how critical electricity is. And there's a strong correlation between the availability of energy and water to quality of life and resilience in the community. So we've adapted this approach to improve the quality of life in first, our backyard in New Mexico, because there's, like our COO was saying, Cody, that there's the largest aquifers of brackish water are in New Mexico. And there's plenty of water, but there's not enough power plants to filter the water, so we have a solution for that. And we're excited about it because we know that, from ranching to agriculture to just remote locations. I met a young entrepreneur just a few moments ago who was telling me that his family village in India ran out of water last week, and they were without water for 4 days because the well pump broke. Our technology can help solve that problem because you don't need a high power transmission line in a remote location to filter water. So it was like, water.
That's great. John?
So our customer discovery process has been really about testing the device, and I wish I had a device that I could show you, but they're all out for testing. And what we've done is an iterative process of using the Sandia SBA program to test, then building some devices and sending them out with potential customers to test, and then doing some more testing with some folks out of El Paso to show that it actually works when you're out on the road by having a control and our device. And so we're compiling all that testing, and it looks like we're going to reformulate how the product works, because one of the concerns of the potential customers is they're out in the middle of nowhere and it may or may not work. So we're going to have a better idea of where exactly the product works. So it's portable. It's you can fold it up in a backpack. You can pull it out when you are looking for signal, but we need to have better dynamics and better product control on where and when that product works. So we're still in that process.
Okay, great. Now we're going to get into some of the nuts and bolts of early startup decision making. One of the issues that every startup encounters is what kind of business organizational structure. LLC, C Corp, S Corp, and it oftentimes is something that's quickly decided and depending strategically on where the company's headed, it can have pretty vast consequences. So if you could tell us a little bit about that thought process that you went through with your companies. Alex?
Yeah. So we formed the company as a C Corp right away, really based on the understanding that diagnostics are a high capital space. So we were going to be raising funds right out of the gate. Needed to license our IP. We had an initial friends and family round, where we were able to raise over $1 million, but within a few months later had closed our seed round for a few more $1 million on top of that. So the C Corp structure just is what meant the most sense for us at the time. Just board composition, how we knew it was going to go. We didn't want to go form as an LLC and then just 3 months later have to spend more money to incorporate as a C Corp. So that's what worked with a lawyer in the process of this. So it just made the most sense for us.
Okay, Andrew?
I don't have a very original answer. Alex took it. It's really about, we envisioned bringing in shareholder and investor dollars and started as a Delaware C Corp as well. But the business is primarily based on immediate revenue, so we hope to never need to take that, but we are in the process of raising funding, and that's why we chose the Delaware C Corp. Johnny Bear, you got a better answer?
Well, I have an answer. I guess I've formed an LLC because I've been spending money, building this technology and developing prototypes for a decade. So I needed to have some way of, keeping track of how much money I've been spending year after year to get it to the place where it was worth showing. And so an LLC is what we currently have, but we have discussed how are we going to grow from that point. And we've discussed several different avenues. We were brainstorming the core of the technology, the platform technology, we call it Chemi pattern, is so adaptable that you can literally create a startup company just with in the field of water or in the field of biomedicals or in the field of semiconductor manufacturing. And so our concept so far has been whoever wants to get in at the early stage will, the technology is held by Lojo, and then we could, come up with some licensing arrangement for an exclusive licensing arrangement for the application, and then there'd be a company formed around that could grow and, become something beyond what we could do ourselves. And that way we would help incentivize people getting bought in, because it's really the technology is so adaptable that you could have multiple companies implementing different solutions.
So the New Mexico Startup Factory uses both C Corps and LLCs. It's really a function of the type of capital we're looking at. When we started ORC Tech, the idea, it's an LLC, the idea was to create the product, which we did, and then start selling it immediately, and therefore the investors that we talked to were okay with this LLC model. As the product has continued to develop, we're still looking for capital, and the LLC model is fine because we don't need a massive amount of capital to get to the next inflection point. But with T-Neuro or Inthentica, the couple other portfolio companies, C Corps, because they're going after big money and looking for really that type of investor that likes that structure.
Okay. Yeah, one of the issues with a C Corp, as you grow and start having a lot of money flowing, is the double taxation. So, it's interesting that the ultimate goal of the founders can often drive that decision. If you're looking to go to IPO or acquisition, a C Corp can tend to be a much simpler structure for those transactions. So,
well, just a word of advice for entrepreneurs. The biggest challenge with an LLC is getting K-1s to your investors.
Yeah.
I mean, that's it. And if you don't get them on time, then you're going to be getting calls every day. Where's my damn K-1? Where's my damn K-1?
Yep, especially if you have a lot of investors. Yep. Okay, so technologists tend to focus on science, but understanding the value chain is critically important to knowing how to market your company, how to work with potential investors. So let's discuss how you determined your value chain and sort of how that impacts your day-to-day operations. So,
Can you say that again? What was determine what?
the value chain. So
Yeah.
it's basically your step-by-step process.
Yeah. So, I mean, to go back at the formation of our company, it was myself and two other co-founders. One of them was a AI machine learning expert, and his focus was the data infrastructure of our company. And the other co-founder, UNM professor Nicolas Milios, he is a neuroscientist. I was a PhD student in his lab, but I was also did an MBA while I was a PhD student, so I had a pretty strong grasp on business as well. So our sort of lanes moving in was, one co-founder was data analytics, another was R&D science for the company, and mine was company formation, fundraising, early marketing, market research. And so we came into the company each with our own lanes that we were focused on. Granted, we were all working together with the same goal to raise the funds, figure out what data we needed, how we needed to analyze it, how we needed to bring in our early investors. So it's, I think, having those sort of guardrails set up and our key focuses helped us get our work done, but we were also able to work together and not get too focused on science or not too focused on business, and just sort of have a very broad path that we went down.
Great. Andrew?
Supercomputer is not something that I think all of us think of on a regular basis. We don't have access to them. There are certain areas within the industry where people rely on them to complete their complex calculations: oil and gas, metals and mining, biopharma, national labs, defense, and research. So in those industries where people know they need it, right, the story is a lot clearer and they see the immediate need. I mentioned before that the main challenges in those spaces come down to the cost, the time to access, and whether the system's just really ready to do the job and get the results. So for us, maybe a little bit of a non-traditional answer to this is that we've really looked at partnerships as we expand outside of our defense and research markets to work with people in the capital market sectors, to work within metals and mining, to better understand what those challenges are. Do they need it on the desk? Do they need it in the cloud? Or do they need it on the field or in an airplane? And so we've worked with them to understand all the value and the addition we've created for this product. Where it really fits well within certain markets is really through partnerships, right? And continual feedback, continual evolution and pivoting of the product. But because our product is software-based, it's highly applicable across all of those spaces. So partnerships is really the key to that for us, and where we've seen the greatest benefit so far coming out of the labs.
Great. Jonathan?
I'm fortunate to have a close-knit team that is comfortable enough to say I have no idea what you're talking about. And because I've heard that enough times from enough people, including my mentor, Peter Schmidt, it helped refine, what can you actually communicate. That's probably where you should continue walking. And so the evolution of the message from, you can do all sorts of things, to what you can quantify. We can quantify the market value, and I can make estimates for how long it'll take to build a particular water treatment system, and I can make metrics that compares it to reverse osmosis. Like, for instance, here's a fun one. 1,000 gallons of water purified with reverse osmosis is equivalent to 17 refrigerator days. So that's your refrigerator running for 17 days. And that's a lot. And you can imagine why you need a power plant to do it. Our technology, pseudomem hydro, would be a fraction of one refrigerator day for the same amount of water, 1,000 gallons of water. So that is what has helped us come up with the application. We're fortunate enough to have a really diverse platform technology. The real struggle has been, can you say how much money you can make, what's your total acquirable market for rural water treatment systems? Yes, now I can calculate it. I can show you the calculation. It was $8 billion. And when it didn't have that focus, it became difficult to say where in the nanoparticle production chain or where in the pharmaceutical market are you going to get in, and then how are you going to generate a revenue stream from your engagement. We started with, hey, we're going to license it. It becomes too difficult to communicate about. And so as a result of that, we're going to build products. We're going to literally manufacture these systems, and we're going to sell them. And we're going to sell them to municipalities. We're going to sell them to governments. And, Lord willing, we'll be able to sell them to people who want to remove hormones from their water supply in Santa Fe. That kind of clarity is what has helped us decide on the application and help us quantify the market value.
John?
So I have to give credit to Jonathan, because when I first saw his presentation at the Rainforest, I had no idea what he was doing. And I think the entire audience had that same connotation. And he worked with a member of our team, but also the community to focus what he's doing. So congratulations, because now I know what the heck you're doing. For us, it was, we really thought we had something special in the marketplace because, once again, here's the device. Essentially, it's a cell phone signal booster. And what you do is you put it next to your cell phone and then just circle around till you got a signal. And the first prototypes were wonderful. They worked. So we ordered 100 more, and none of the damn things worked. And it was not because that the original design was not correct. It was the manufacturer that did them for us made arbitrary and capricious changes without our knowledge. And so that allowed us to do two things. One is we recognize we need a better manufacturer, and our CTO's here, Joshua, wave your hand. So he's out there working on trying to find that person, that manufacturer, but also better design changes so that it enhances the ability to catch the signal. The technology was built by NASA, and so we can do this, we know it works, we just need to refine the product and do more testing. And then there's the other value proposition is we can put these things in between cell phone towers, 5G, to enhance the signal. And so you don't need to build cement kind of things and hardware and software and all the electronics in this thing. You just put this thing in the middle and it enhances that. So that's another market dynamic. We're working on it. But once again, our focus right now is developing this and getting it out into the marketplace at a price competitive type of process.
If you're taking beta testers, that's sure like one of those.
Everybody wants one. We only have 7 of them.
So in terms of sort of longer term thinking, durability of the business, how do you foresee how you'll defend your market in, let's say, a 5-year time horizon, and then for the longer term, maybe 10 years? Alex?
Yeah, so I think our product that we're developing, while it's been focused in depression up to this point, the technology that we're using is really a platform technology that circularized RNA is highly stable rather than linear RNA in your body, which might have a half-life of an hour or two. Circularized forms of it will have a half-life of 24 to 72 hours, if not longer. So and it's endogenously expressed in different tissue types throughout your body. So our short-term focus has been into depression because that's where our original IP and background took us. And we saw the market of over 80 million Americans struggling with depression, and average time to find a successful treatment being well over 6 months, if not over a year. So our focus was there originally, but we do have some research projects starting up in Alzheimer's diagnosis and prediction. also looking into different types of oncology as well. So I think when you're looking at a highly stable molecule like this, for example, in oncology, we could potentially predict remission significantly earlier than any of the current means that are available in the clinic at the moment. So I think there's opportunities for us to be exploring into other conditions. As we continue to grow, we'll become an acquisition target for larger companies in this space, but it's really a technology that can be used across the board in human health and medicine, so to better predict and monitor and diagnose medical conditions. So.
Okay. Andrew?
I can't see the future very well, but our team has over 40 years in technology experience. What we've seen in the trend is that tech's always evolving. So we bring with us a huge background of constantly evaluating emerging technologies and refitting software to take advantage of that. So that's one way in which we see continuing to propel this capability into the future. But that's more vertical. On a horizontal line, while we may fit and focus today in one market, supercomputing and high-performance computing technologies is of value across the broad spectrum of the S&P 500. So while we might focus today in defense, tomorrow we focus on research, in 5 years we may continue to focus in the capital market. That gives us the ability to continue expanding our footprint and adding value in all of these industries, both locally and around the world. So that's our approach.
Okay, Jonathan?
As soon as we start generating some revenue to build the business upon, we'll start investing in some of the other applications that require a bit more investment, like drug delivery design. And that's one of the big, pharmaceuticals was one of the big markets that we evaluated during our stint with the Rainforest Accelerator program. But as soon as we have a lab and a building, a lot of the concepts we can start developing, like a metamaterial line, and synthesizing our own nanoparticles, and then we can figure out how to engage once we have a revenue stream and a business flowing that will definitely keep us competitive. I was telling people, and I sincerely mean this, that the chemi pattern technology, the wet chemical lithography, controlling chemistry at the nanoscale with electric fields, is going to be done 100 years, 1,000 years into the future. And so I'm confident that the only real limitation we have is, can we take the idea before it gets hijacked by another, let's say, country. Somebody else is going to figure this out. We're just ahead of the game, and so that's my answer.
John?
Yeah, so this is our focus now. We're going to continue to look at the backhaul for the cellular's cell phone market, and then looking at our intellectual property, continuing to build that suite so that we can look at other potential verticals that we can go after. But got to start here and then continue to grow the IP portfolio and also the product portfolio.
Okay, thanks. So let's talk about cash. When one of my earliest investors had a great saying, "Cash is truth," and that's so true for a startup. So, what have you learned about cash flow, accessing the capital markets, and then finally, are you currently in the market for VC funding yourselves?
Okay.
Alex?
Thank you. So I think to put down my learnings with cash flow, so I was founding CEO of the company and led us through our first seed round where we raised $4.5 million. And that was a journey. I think we had an atypical response, as it was much easier to raise the capital than I had experienced in previous companies. But the resources that were put around us were extremely helpful for it. I mean, I think, just give you guys a little bit of a timeline of our company. Nicholas and I, other co-founder, we were here presenting the technology, I believe, in 2019 for the company. And after that, we had some initial investor response, but the technology at the time was largely based around bipolar disorder and schizophrenia, which are smaller markets, still, a big concern for society. But the feedback we had got from investors actually after sharing the technology here was, market is too small, take a look at depression. And so we spent a year or so looking there and gathering data, and that pushed us out into 2020, and then later into 2021. But we found some strong data in depression, and after I finished my PhD, we decided we have this now, the depression data, we're going to start the company, where are we going to go from here? And it started off with a pitch competition at Lobo Rainforest, where I placed first and won $10,000 for the company. Having recently graduated, that was half of my annual salary for the year before, so that was great. Used that money to get a lawyer for the company to start it and start bringing in capital. But just after that pitch competition, one of the judges was on the phone with me the next day saying, "Hey, we need to talk." We had a really resounding following from that of just local investors interested. I mentioned earlier, after that pitch competition, within 2 months, we had raised over $1 million, and then by that fall, we had closed a full $4.5 million seed round. So our local community here, whether it's the local funds to individuals in the bioscience space that helped take a look at the pitch deck that I was developing at the time, gave me a lot of feedback on the pitch. Figuring out, market strategy, how to angle things to really build a business out of the science, and then just where we moved forward from there. It was initially a small team in our company. We've expanded. We recently brought on a new CEO who brings about 30 years of experience onto the team in the biotech and medical device space. And, we've got a former chief medical officer of Ancestry.com as a board member in our company and a clinical advisor. So we've been filling out a lot of key pieces in our team as we continue to grow, looking to raise a Series A round later this year. We'll open it over the summer, later this fall. And so that'll be our next batch of funding that we need to go after. So.
Okay, thanks. Andrew?
Having 4 years of product validation showed us that there was truly a market for what we were doing. We'd raised a lot of money internal to the lab through mission-driven organizations who needed the capability. So when we left as a self-funded startup because we wanted to find specific paths of revenue to build the company and create a strong foundation, but also identify strategic partnerships. People who knew the value and needed the value of dual-use technology usable for government and private sector to endure their missions and get the results that they needed. Now, this allowed us to do two things, right? Using your own dollars, you learn to be very lean and highly agile. So, the bootstrap method was our first take. And we started building revenue. We built our minimum viable product. We sold those. We built more. We continued building partnerships to identify those potential investors who saw the value in what we were doing for industries that they could open up access to for us. So funding is important. It is hard to be a self-funded startup, as many of you know if you've gone that route. But you learn a lot in the process. You learn really how to prioritize, really to focus and drive the value that your customers need. I mentioned earlier, we are in the process of raising money because we're looking to grow beyond where we are today. And so if anybody's interested, I've got some cards. Happy to talk more about it. But again, the funding that we're looking for will help us continue to grow outside of the markets we're currently focused on. So thank you.
Okay, Jonathan.
Andrew said it well there, that cash means lean. If you're self-funded, which we are, there's no other option. So we think about how do we generate revenue? How can we start, making money from what we're currently doing? And we've been, fielding those opportunities. There was some phrase I got from the experience at the Rainforest Accelerator is be sensitive where there's push and where there's where you're constantly pushing and where people are pulling you to. And so we're trying to be sensitive to the pull. And as one of our other partners, Brecken, who just arrived, I'm just going to give him a shout out, has said, you got to be lean. You got to be lean, not just in expenditures, but also in time. Because most of us are, we're doing this because we really believe in it. And the availability of money at this point in cash is really strongly correlated to how fast we can grow and implement the technology before somebody else does. And I just want to harp on that because I know the next question, I was looking ahead a little, is the timing is right or not. So for us in particular, been working on developing a proof of concept, and I've been sharing this story. I'll just mention it briefly. I shopped around some technologies about a decade ago. I met with one of the principal inventors of this said technology, and over several months we were discussing whether or not we could turn it into a business. And he eventually said, 99% chance this will never work. And I was like, okay, I appreciate you saying that. And so subsequently, that technology has been used to create a startup company, and they've raised millions of dollars, and they still do not have a proof of concept. It's been 10 years. So the difference with us and what brings a lot of that confidence to the table here is that I've spent that 10 years developing the technology. I have a proof of concept, got measurements, got a device that works, and I'm ready to go. And so now we just need cash to start building these things so that we can, put something on the table and say, water in, dirty, water out, clean, with a little power meter there. So that's what I think about. I'm not interested in anything but cash at this moment.
John?
So we've raised a small amount of capital for ORC Tech, and we have some really good foundational support from the Startup Factory. And really, we sometimes feel like a biotech company. You need data. To raise cash, but you need cash to get the data. And so that's what we're working on right now, is creating that data and that value proposition in order to go back out into the markets and say, okay, we need $1.5 million, and we're gonna get to the market, and we can sell these things at $200 a pop. Our cost to create them is $15. And really the vision is at scale. Verizon, AT&T would give these out when they sell a smartphone. So that's the future vision, and we're creating the data to get there.
Okay, and tied pretty tightly with the whole cash question is timing. It's sort of like the Goldilocks and the Three Bears question is it too early, too late, or just the right time? And so what's your experience been? Did you feel going into it that you had a handle on timing, and has that played out?
Yeah, I mean, I think for us, we probably raised too much money too early. I think if we had raised a smaller amount of money, built up our team a little bit more, used that to get some better preliminary data. I think because with money also comes expectations. So making sure that we had the right personnel, the right team, the lab technicians, the lab set up, so we could meet the expectations of our early investors. That would have probably been a better approach. But I also think money brings certainty that you're going to be able to pay your staff, that you're going to be able to set up these clinical trials and fund the research that'll come from them. So it's trying to find a balance between the two. I think in some instances, I think we raised a little too much too soon, but I also think that it gave us the ability to really focus in on R&D and and figure out what we need and make a plan on how to get it. So it's, I would say, the figuring out just sort of a 2 to 3 year plan of where you want to go with your company and making sure that you have that right amount of runway to get there. That's probably the amount of money that you're going to want. If you don't raise enough, then you're going to spend a lot more time focusing on raising more money sooner than you would have if you had raised the money. Then you could focus in on your product development. So it's just figuring out a balance between all the different pieces here. So, and then also, the more money you raise sooner, the more your company you're going to end up giving away too. So you just it's a balance between product development, fundraising, equity preservation in the company, just figuring out what's the best case scenario for you and making sure that you're not going to miss any of those expectations that somebody has of you. So.
Okay, great.
We based a lot of our direction for funding needed based on what our goals or our milestones were at the time. Could we build a product without any funding and begin selling it to bring in a string of revenue? Yes. If we were going to grow that product, what sorts of investment might we need in order to get past that next hurdle? So it was very goal-driven, very milestone-based. So I don't want to belabor that. I think that's really been our focus. It allowed us to keep, to your point, right, equity loss very low or nil. Allowed us to focus on specific products, verify their value, prove it through sales and partnerships, and then continue growing sort of incrementally as we continue to build larger momentum. Thank you.
Jonathan?
I think we're fortunate that the timing worked out the way it did. The pandemic caused a bit of a delay in my completion of my experiments and work that led to the essentially bringing this to the table for a company. But what has been increasingly stronger and stronger theme in my head, that it's intuiting the right time, is that there's a lot of interest in frontier technologies, and there's a lot of need. If you don't know about Las Vegas, New Mexico, their water system and Chama running out of water, and there's this talk of somebody mentioned in passing, I think it was Stacy, the peak water. Like, people are like, the water levels are low, et cetera, and so forth. And so the timing's right, and in the same kind of vein, there's this whole government-initiated move to onshore technologies, to bring manufacturing back home. And so I think our company, our technology, our vision is definitely in lockstep with those values. And one layer on top of that is the concept of resilience. I mean, for a water-stressed community to experience like a disaster, like this massive fire, and then all the runoff and pollution that they are going to experience in all the communities, water and New Mexico, and water and resilience and water and energy use and availability of energy is all very well socialized in our communities. And then that's one of the reasons why I think it's the right time to really go, here we are, and we got something that's definitely going to make an impact, and people are already talking that language.
John?
So I think any technology is really a function of what the market wants and how you create that value proposition for the market. And so as a process, if we look at the market and we look at that customer and we look at the product and we look at the financing needed and we look at how do you create the company to get to that point. So our technology was ripe not because we believed it, it's because the market, when we went out and did the market review and talking to people about the product, they said, yes, there is a potential for this. Now we have to create the product, do the validation, all those other things, but that's just a foundational type of process that you'd want to go through for any company that you start. Because I've been doing this a long time, and people come with companies that have a great solution, but they don't know what the problem is. And so they're creating really good stuff that may or may not have anybody that wants to buy it. So really, the first question is, who's your customer, and how are they going to use it, and how much you're going to charge for it?
Great. So one of the problems with that is often encountered with sort of heartland, originated, startups and technologies is the problem of getting funding from one of the coastal VC firms, for example, who then want you to move. And so, how do you look at that question in terms of New Mexico? Let's talk about what puzzle pieces need to come into place to be able to keep you in New Mexico. What are you looking for when it comes to determining that this is the place to stay and where you can grow and thrive? Alex?
Yeah, so our current composition of venture funds that have invested of us are 2 local New Mexico funds, 3 actually, and 1 out-of-state fund that was based out in Nashville, Tennessee. And I think through our first round and most likely our second round here, I don't think we will run into this problem with anybody expecting us to move. But I think one of the, to identify a problem is that there's not middle to late stage capital for startups that are in a cash intensive industry here in the state. So, through a $4.5 million seed to probably a $10 to $12 million Series A, we can probably stay here. But if we need to go raise a Series B for an expensive clinical trial or something, and we are reaching out to funds that are in San Diego or Boston, we're going to run that risk where they would want us to move down the road from them as opposed to fly to New Mexico to work with us. So I think that's one of the pieces I would say is that the state here, focusing some funds into those, middle, late stage startup companies, because not every startup is going to drive revenue off of, $500,000 to a couple $1 million of funding. There's going to be some here that have the potential to become billion-dollar companies, but will need to raise $50 to $100 million to get there. So I think but it doesn't look like that kind of those type of funding opportunities exist in the state right now. So I think that's something that would need to be looked at in the future. But
okay, Andrew?
Yeah, funding is important. While we haven't dove deep into that pool today, it is something we will look at. For us, staying in New Mexico has a lot to do with the resources that are here and the partnerships that we developed. The origin story of Hoonify really started with STEM. We had students coming into Sandia Labs who'd never seen or touched a supercomputer. They had no idea how to use them. And so the founder built a STEM program to teach advanced degree individuals as well as student interns how to build their own, how to use them, how to make effective use of their time and get real results for real national security problems. New Mexico has a huge opportunity with the 2 labs that we have here, with Air Force Research Lab and the base, to pay back the communities and help these technologies get in the hands of our students who continue to struggle in math and science and other areas. Because that's our origin story, that's very close to our heart. How do we help students get new skills? How do we help community colleges have stronger workforce development programs? How do we feed back into the employers that are already here, who we depend on every day to keep this nation secure and safe? Going back to resources, stepping out of the labs, it's amazing what's outside of the fence, as we say, when you work behind the fence your whole life. Finding resources as an entrepreneur is extremely difficult in Albuquerque, and I imagine the greater New Mexico. I really want to give a strong shout out to the programs and the startup accelerators. Air Force Research Laboratory has Q Station that connects entrepreneurs working in space tech with AFRL and other agencies. The New Mexico Startup Alliance is here today with Sandy Hirschberg, helping entrepreneurs connect to resources they may not know about. Economic Development Division of the state of New Mexico has been fantastic. When we came out, all of these were very disparate. New Mexico Startup Alliance is looking at how do they bring them together and give people one front door into finding these resources to help them be successful. Another shout out, the Angels. Drew has been fantastic about asking new questions that we hadn't considered before we left, right? What's your PR plan? What do you need? How can we help you? Those resources and relationships are critical, and I think the state needs to do more to create more avenues for this, bring those resources together. They're taking steps, they're making progress. More is needed, but thank you.
Jonathan?
We are looking forward to making a global impact. The idea of leaving New Mexico is not even on the table. We love New Mexico, it's where we're from, our roots are here. And I think it may be a generational thing or something, but there are obviously things more important than business, like values and family, and I think that community and building community requires you to grow roots and develop relationships, and been here, I've been associated with UNM for and NMSU for over a decade now. And those relationships you can't just replace. There's no amount of money somebody can give you, and that includes your neighbors and the like. So the whole reshoring and American made, I'm definitely on board with that. I mean, I think we have the most capable people around in New Mexico. I think we definitely underestimated, but there's things that we can make changes to policy and government to make make it more business friendly, but those aren't things that you achieve by fleeing to go to where somebody say, hey, you need to have some sort of lab in Boston or whatever. I don't know. I'm not hating on Boston, but we can do it here, and we can do it just as well as we could anywhere else. But I think that growing roots is what makes a place great. I mean, the reason why Los Alamos is here and San Diego are here and UNM are here is because people had the foresight to build something that would go beyond their lifetime. And so that's kind of one of the core values of what we're trying to do, is that we're thinking not just in 2-3 years, thinking this might take 20 years. And not a lot of people think like that, but I'm cultivating that.
So I truly believe it's a New Mexico myth that companies leave because of financing. If you look at IntelliSite, they had a Series B, they stayed here. You don't see a lot of companies get into a Series B financing. Either they're acquired or they go away. So if you get to that Series B level, I think you're a blessed company, and you can move forward on that. Look at Meow Wolf, New Mexico companies, they're still here. Samba Safety was a silent success. They're still here. They moved their headquarters up to Denver, but that was not because of the lack of financing. So you look at the resources here that are coming into play right now, the SSBCI program. The legislature just put another $10 million into the New Mexico Venture Fund managed by the New Mexico Finance Authority. I think Sun Mountain got some of that money. So as you look forward, there's going to be a ton of capital available for early stage startup kind of companies. And one of the things that I really would like to see in New Mexico is the mission of the capital providers stay true. You look at the catalyst funds that are out there, there's 6 of them. We started 110 Capital, and we deployed our entire amount of capital. But there's some of the catalyst funds that are focused on Series B money. And that's not what that program was designed to do, or was even the money was not supposed to go. It was supposed to go to seed and early stage companies, not Series B. But the guys that got the money are still getting their management fee, and they have made no investments in New Mexico. And I think that's one of the challenges with some of the money that's being talked about. It's not committed to New Mexico. And we just need to make sure that if we are giving money to capital providers, that they fund their appropriate dollars into the New Mexico market. And hopefully, as we continue to grow, you're going to see more Series B fundings. But right now, they're very, very lacking. There's a lot of Series A, but the companies are staying here because that's why they created the company here, was to stay here and not chase dollars to leave New Mexico.
Thanks. So yeah, I found the keynote, Norman's talk, quite exciting on this topic. I think it's a really great step in the right direction to combine the venture studio kind of approach with a fund that can then take you on to the later stages. So we've got a few minutes left. If anybody in the audience would like to direct any questions to the panel members.
Is export control an issue?
So the question is export control an issue for any of the startups?
No.
It depends on the application, but I would say definitely if our pacing adversary were to understand and start utilizing our technology, that's a risk for sure.
I've got a mic. It is, right? Depending on, to Johnny's point, the application, right? In the national security space, many of those applications and uses are export controlled or higher, right? But there's also the flip side of that, plenty of things that are public, open source, that's not a factor. But always the adversary, right? Trying not to keep my former lab hat on. Who's using the technology? We're primarily focused US-based only.
It's not a problem for us. I'd say the closest thing that we work through is we've got a clinical trial in Europe that has recently started, and we have to ship samples, patient samples in from Europe, but we don't have any import or export problems with it.
Okay, any more questions?
If you were to scale 100, 500,000 employees, are you confident that you can find the skill sets you need in New Mexico right now?
So the question is, if you scale to, large numbers of employees, are you confident you can find the workforce you need?
It depends on the timeline. Can we birth them and raise them? I mean, seriously, if we can grow them, yeah, I think so.
Well, especially if you're talking metaphorically, where you can have internal training within the program to bring in people and develop them as well. Is that? Yeah.
I think we got a great workforce in New Mexico, and at scale, yes, you can get them. I think UNM does a great job. I think CNM does a great job. I think even APS is really producing some good students, and we just need to focus on the good. They're out there, and yes, you're going to have to pay them a living wage and a good wage, but if you have a solid company, you can do that.
I'll put in a plug for tech there, too. I think we're doing a pretty good job.
It's an important question, right? Today, we're working on ways to train that workforce to be able to support the technologies that we're putting out there. We all learn through education, through opportunities. That's where we go back to STEM. How do we provide, opportunities within that environment to build them? But that's the long play. So yes, I do believe they are here. Hoonify is building curricula that can be used for workforce development to help with that, to feed back into the labs and other areas. But we have a talent retention issue, right? Facebook hires from the labs, who hires from UNM, who hires from local companies, right? So how do you build an environment that continually feeds that? I don't know that there's ever going to be all the talent you need, but the real good companies are going to have a plan on how they build those to keep that talent in the state.
I think the honest answer for our industry would probably be no. We wouldn't be able to scale in New Mexico. We would need a sort of a comprehensive training of laboratory technicians to be coming in. Our direct competitor for employees at the technician level is going to be Tricor and the other clinical laboratories here in Albuquerque, and there's not a lot of clinical lab techs available for us to hire. So that this is where, I mean, one of the things that we do as a company is we do hire local New Mexicans. Myself being a UNM graduate, three other employees are all UNM graduates within the last year or two. So we're turning around and hiring from the talent pool. But I think, if I had to put out 100 job postings for clinical lab techs tomorrow, there's not 100 clinical lab techs that I could hire. So this is something where working with CNM and UNM, we would have to work on building that talent workforce, expanding those programs out so there are more employees that we could hire. I think the bioscience industry in New Mexico is expanding and it's getting better, but it's still an early industry. I think on the management level too, our recent CEO hire for the company, he's based out in San Jose and is commuting into New Mexico to work with us. Finding people with significant amount of executive level experience in New Mexico in the biotech, medical device, diagnostic industry is difficult. But I think there's a lot of resources here in New Mexico where we can bring people in from out of state as well. So, while we find people that are available in the state to employ them, that will be our preference and our focus, and we will try to get people to also be coming in. But talent is, one of the pieces, it's an important piece in the company that is a risk to us if we can't address that problem, so.
Okay, thanks. Well, I think that pretty much uses up our time. I want to thank the panel for a great flow of information and thank everybody here.